My father-in-law, Harold Hancock, was a young captain in the Army in World War II. Harold was part of many of the major initiatives during that war that you read about in the history books. He was part of the Texas Tea Patchers, which was under the 36th Division in the 144th Infantry. Now, the reason I mention Harold is because for the remainder of his life, he always got together annually with his fellow Tea Patchers. Whatever it took for him to get to a reunion, he would absolutely do it. Why? Because together, those men had been part of something that required sacrifice, mutual care, and bravery in order to fight for the freedom of the world against tyranny. And together, they experienced the deaths of friends, the terrible conditions of being on a field of battle. Together, they rejoiced at the ultimate victory that together they had made possible. And so when they came together at a reunion, they celebrated all those experiences of what bonded them together as brothers in that great cause. Now, throughout his writings in the New Testament, Paul often speaks of his great affection for the members of the churches he helped to establish. He often mentions the specific reasons as the willingness to step out in faith and be part of the advancement of the gospel. He often reminisces about their faithfulness, perseverance, mutual love, and sacrifice. And it always leads him to an expression of personal joy and celebration. Why? Because it is something they, by faith, experience together. When you look at the history of Terrace Lake Church, it has been built on a group of people, or better, a family of believers seeking God's activity, be it locally or internationally. Once we discern God's activity, we move by faith to join the Lord in His work. It has required the sacrifice of time and talents, of money, but this church has been faithful, and because of that faithfulness, the Lord continues to open more doors of opportunity for the work of His kingdom. And when we look back at these times, we won't look back and remember necessarily the sacrifice. Rather, we remember the experiences of God's provision. This is the thing that binds us together in love as a church family. This is the work we have experienced together. What we have experienced is worthy of celebration. In the last several years, we have followed God's activity, and as a church family have embarked on two generosity initiatives. The first was Move, and the second was called Thirst. God was faithful to work through this body in both initiatives, which were obvious faith builders for us all. Certainly we can look back and celebrate God's faithfulness. We also celebrate God's faithfulness in what He continues to do and will do through the ministries of Terrace Lake. For some time, the leadership of Terrace Lake has been praying, watching God's activity, and discussing what is next for our church. And so as a leadership, we believe it is timely for another significant step of faith, a third generosity initiative we are calling Reach. Now, there are two fronts to Reach. The first one is to reach up in our love and knowledge of God by broadening and strengthening our current ministries, our staff, and our structure, which would include Terrace Lake Kids, Terrace Lake students, community and discipleship group ministries. Secondly, we want to reach out in our love for others by increasing our capacity to minister the gospel to folks not only in our community, but also around the world. Now, the reality is that we're already doing these very things, and we're simply responding to the Lord's expansion of these opportunities. I can't speak for you, but for me, there's nothing like being a part of something that not only makes an impact in the here and now, but more importantly, in eternity. There's nothing like being a part of a church family that's being transformed by a loving relationship with God, and then seeing that love manifested in glorifying God by growing in Christ and making disciples and serving sacrificially. Now, the reason we can celebrate what the Lord has done and continues to do through Terrace Lake is because of faithful members committing themselves to a lifestyle of being and doing these very things. You know that who we are and what we do as individuals and as a church grows out of Jesus' great commandment from Mark chapter 12, verses 30 and 31. Jesus says, "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and all of your strength." And then he says, the second is this, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." The reason Jesus highlighted these commandments was because if we get these right, then all the others fall easily into place.
God's blessings and activity here at Terrace Lake spur us to boldness. Prudence feels safe, but how is prudence a demonstration of faith? One of the things that I love about Terrace Lake is that we always follow God's activity, from resourcing ministries to hiring staff to expanding our building and even the parking lot. We move by faith, often into the uncomfortable. Reach is a 2-year generosity initiative that we believe will change this church, our community, and the world. We've prayerfully set a big goal of $4.2 million over 2 years. $1.8 million will go toward our operating expenses and internal discipleship. We want to be a church of believers loving God wholeheartedly. So we're calling this part of the initiative, Reach Up, Love God. It's disciples making disciples, being transformed by God. We want to strengthen our current ministries and staff, including Terrace Lake Kids, Terrace Lake students, community groups, and biblical counseling. $2.4 million will be allocated toward outreach, missions, and a building expansion. We live in a broken and hurting world, and Reach will increase our capacity to minister and love others. This part of the initiative is Reach Out, Love Others. Reach Out will allow us to increase giving to and service with local ministry partners. We'll also increase funding for sending people to foreign missions. Over the past few years, Terrace Lake has become a sending church for missionaries. Not only do we make disciples, but we send disciples. And since 2016, we've sent 3 missionary families, and next year alone, we'll send 3 more. It includes expanding our building with more space for Terrace Lake kids and students, dedicated space for community and discipleship groups, biblical counseling space, and a new sanctuary. Through Reach, we are facilitating active, vibrant ministries at Terrace Lake, with direct investments in staff and facility. We have and will continue to enlarge God's kingdom, both here and abroad. To continue this, we need your help. We need everyone's help.
Now, with all that said, I'm urging you as your pastor and brother in Christ to take a significant step in faith and join in this good work we call Reach. You know, my father-in-law, Harold Hancock, as I said, always looked forward to being with his brothers in arms to celebrate what they had accomplished together. To the day he died, he never missed those opportunities. I'm urging you to be a part of something that together we can celebrate all the days of our lives.